Hi there. Thank you for joining us. My name's Scott McLachlan, and this is the Play Up podcast. I always get that wrong. And this week, again, I'm doing a My Pompey Life, and I'm delighted to be joined by Reece Hawkins from the Chichester Supporters Club and also the 4-0 Written All Over It crew. So thank you very much for joining me, Reece.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on for one of your episodes.
That's all right. We'll get into your Pompey life in a minute. You joined, I had Donald Vass on before, and you started watching a similar sort of time. So it'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on that time in the very early years of Championship success and then Premiership life. But let's deal with Pompey as it is now. Obviously, we're hurtling through September and we haven't got a win yet. I'm not too worried at the moment. I will be if we get to the end of October and we haven't won. So you've seen a bit more live football than I have. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a fair reflection on a lot of Pompey fans at this moment in time. You know, you looked at the fixtures before they came out, thinking, pinpointing games that we think we could be successful with this season and give it a real good go. And then at the fixture release breakfast that I was at, as soon as that fixture list came out and you could see you've got Leeds, you've got Luton, you've got Middlesbrough, all within the same couple of weeks, it was a bit daunting. And obviously you had to be realistic for a club that's just come up from League One to be fighting it with the big boys. You would, you'd have to be optimistic to be thinking you'd be getting 3 points every week to start the season with. I'm in the same boat. I believe that there's no point kind of going into panic mode at this moment in time. I'm happy at the points that we did get because I do believe it could have gone either way, especially like Leeds and Middlesbrough. We could have won it and lost it quite easily within the same game itself. However, on reflection, the last couple of games obviously haven't been good at all. We've been battered at home both times, conceding 3 goals in both of the games. But I do believe, obviously, our fortune's got to change eventually. As soon as we can get over the hurdles of Burnley, Sheffield United, and potentially Stoke City away, because that won't be easy either, especially now that they've got a new manager in place as well. So they have a lot of optimism going into the game when it comes to October. But yeah, teams around us such as Cardiff, Plymouth, I know they had a great win over Sunderland, but let's see if that's a one-off at this moment in time and see and really, really get to test to see what we're all about. Like you say, come October, if it gets to the end of it and we haven't picked up many wins and we've only got a couple of points again, like draws from the early stages of the season, I will be a bit worried, and you would have to start questioning where the wins are going to come from, because we're going to be playing teams in October that we were holding out for after the first 7 fixtures. So yeah, I'm the same boat. I'm not too panicking at the moment, but yeah, things do need to change, and I think we've got to believe in Messina and the team.
Yeah, what we said on our last pod that it was a bit. So the late transfer dealings combined with the injuries, obviously the injuries you can't do much about it, especially the lightning bolt of Bishop being unavailable, and then the injuries to Shopwasey and a couple of others. The spine of the team has been ripped out from last season, and that's really difficult to deal with. Pack anyone there who's really got that consistency from last season, and with the transfer dealings being done so late, it seems as if we've been waiting to start our season from August onwards. And as you say, we've come up against the realism of the league, the last 2 home games, and got easy. I wouldn't say easily beaten, but once teams got on top, we didn't really have an answer. So I'm hoping that we get the new guys up and running. They had a friendly, didn't they, yesterday? For an hour
we
or
beat
something.
We beat Havant or Waterlooville 3-0 in a behind closed doors game, which was really, really key for obviously the progress of back to match fitness for Regan Paul, etc. And like you've just highlighted, the injuries that we've had already coming into the season, a lot of the spine of the team, the ones that obviously really stood out last year, like Shopnessy, for example, have been a huge, huge miss. And going into games such as Middlesbrough and then Sunderland, having someone like Jordan Williams playing at obviously centre-back when he's naturally a right-back is a bit worrying. And obviously coming into the season as well, when we started at Ellen Road, there was a lot of fans' opinions thinking that we come into that game weaker than we started, at the end of last season. And that to me is a bit worrying, because we have brought in some quality, and I think Dazell's done quite well to start in the middle of the midfield of Pack, but I don't know if it's enough quality, because there's reasons why QPR let him go, for example. because they're a team that are going to be fighting around us as well. But there have been, quite a lot of unlucky injuries that we've had, because look at Omani as well. He's come straight in. I forgot his name. Is it Abane? The player that we signed? Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Not even played a game, took a shot in training, he's out for 6 months. There's a lot of conspiracy around, obviously, our injuries at the club at this moment in time, and it has been for about 12 months going on. That, why is it always happening to us, is what fans are saying. I don't look too much into it. I do believe, obviously, things are just a coincidence and bad luck. I do believe in that sort of thing. But it is really, really refreshing to see that McIntyre's back, Regan Paul's getting back to match fitness, Josh Murphy had his debut. There are positives within it all, and you are absolutely right in respect that we need to get that correct 11, starting 11 back sooner rather than later, so then Messino knows who he wants to be picking every week with the options that he can actually have.
Yeah, he's not gonna know his first 11 for weeks yet, is he?
No,
and
exactly.
You talked about injuries there. McIntyre and Paul from last season, they were freak injuries because they lunged into tackles, and when you do that, you can badly hurt yourself, and unfortunately those two didn't they? So that's not a training injury. That's a contact injury in the game, and there's not much you can do about those. Right. Well, I don't think that's an unfair assessment at all, but certainly what we've been talking about on the pod. So we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that we see some more improvement on Saturday, and then we go into the Sheffield United game at home and look to see if we can get our, if we don't have a miracle at Burnley, then Sheffield United could be our first win of the season.
Yeah, and I honestly believe that we do need to stick behind the squad at this moment in time. There's been a lot of negativity, especially after the Sunderland game and now obviously the West Brom game, thinking that, we're just not up to the standards of the Championship, which, again, all fans are, entitled to their opinion. They pay the money to go and watch their football. At the end of the day, though, we have to believe in this manager that's got us into this division as well. And he hasn't had the tools to be able to be fighting, on par with the rest of the league at this moment in time, because our best players have been out injured. And that's just generally the fact of it. We haven't had our starting centre-backs. Our marquee signing of the summer, Josh Murphy, has been out injured as well. He was a big name for when we signed him, coming from Oxford. He was the best player on the pitch in the playoff final. If we've not had these kind of people to be able to start week in, week out to start with, then we're obviously not going to be on par and not going to be doing our best. So you are right. Yeah, we just got to hope that we can get through the next couple of games, hopefully not get 5 or 6 put past us against Burnley, and really give it a go against Sheffield United. Once past there, I do believe fans will start to see a little bit more consistency with fighting fit in this league.
Yeah, I hope you're right. So let's move on to your Pompey life. So I sent you the usual 6 questions that I send to everybody, and the first one was obviously about your first game. So take us through your memories of the first time you watched Pompey, and it was at Fratton Park. So tell me about that game, because it's quite an interesting and legendary game, that game that you saw.
Yeah, so my first game I ever went to, because build up to my first game itself, I had known about Pompey and seen them on TV highlights such as ITV Meridian, etc., that sort of thing. But I had never actually gone to see Pompey or know too much about the atmosphere, etc. But I remember it quite well, as that I've been told that there was tickets available to go watch Portsmouth versus Liverpool in the 5th round replay, I believe, because it finished 1-1 at Anfield. And I just remember parking up down by where the B&Q is now. So you've got the new Audi and all that opposite the big Tesco's, just by Fratton Park.
Yep.
And I remember getting out, not having a clue in terms of what to expect. And obviously at that such young age, I was anticipating, overthinking that it's going to be absolutely incredible. The fans are going to be handing me flags and all that sort of stuff on the way to the ground. But I just remember straight away, as soon as we got out of the car and we started crossing the road, I just had all these fans singing behind me walking up to the ground, and I turned around thinking that somebody was just shouting at somebody else. And it took me a few moments to realise that this is what English football was all about. And this is exactly why I think, when I reflect on it now, I couldn't have asked for a better intro into live football itself. And this isn't even talking about the game itself before anything. This is just the build up to it. And I just remember loads of Liverpool fans walking together, singing. But then when I got to Fratton Park itself and got into the ground, it only took about 2 minutes before Pompey Fans started singing. And back then, of course, as we all know what Fratton Park was like in the first season of being back in the Premier League. Season in the Premier League, retitled, of course. I just remember just looking around and just thinking, this is exactly where I want to be. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was getting myself into before this game. I knew a couple of the players' names and seen highlights of it, but I knew I was hooked on as soon as I watched that game. And like you highlighted earlier, what a game for me to watch first. To win it 1-0. And obviously we were very close to losing it, of course, because Michael Owen missed a penalty. And I remember it very clearly as well, because I remember Richard Hughes got the winner. And obviously, for me to get my first game under my belt and a win, I don't think there was any better feeling whatsoever. And I knew walking away from Fratton Park with the atmosphere, the play up Pompey at every corner, I just knew that I was going to be hooked on for life then. And obviously, the situation I'm in now, talking to you, I think it's clear to say that I did stay hooked.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was obviously Hughes getting the winner, with sort of 15, 20 minutes to go, and he actually came on a sub as half-time for Stefanovic, who'd got injured. But so there was 2 other incidents as well in that game. It's fair to say the referee had a mare for that game, an absolute mare. He might as well have come out with a Liverpool shirt on the way he refereed that game. But there was the penalty you mentioned. And that was the Matthew Taylor great tackle, which the referee gave a penalty for. Should never have been a penalty.
Exactly.
Do you remember what else happened in that game?
Oh, see, now you're putting me on my, putting my memories back.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because Donald mentioned this game as well in his pod. So, like I said, you two got similar starts to life at Fratton, but the referee tried to give a penalty for handball when Limvoy Primus and Milan Baros went up for a header from a free kick, and it was clear that it was Baros's white arm that went up and not Limvoy's black arm that went up. So he gave a penalty for handball, and Pompey players surrounding the referee, incredulous, saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" It's clearly Milan Baros. So thankfully, the referee, went to his linesman. The linesman went.
See, now I remember this bit.
I think you made a bit of a rick there, mate. Yeah. I think it was definitely a white arm, not a black one. And then the referee went, no, free kick to Pompey. And and so it's just like twice he tried to give. Well, he successfully gave a penalty, which thankfully Owen missed. But the second time he actually tried to give it for a handball, which was clearly not the player that he was identifying as being a handball. So. Yeah, I mean, we won the game, but the referee, certainly tried his best to make sure that we didn't.
And these sort of things obviously stand out to you, don't they, as well? Especially when you vividly remember all this sort of stuff. But no, like I said, I definitely do remember the Richard Hughes goal, bottom corner, obviously. Like I said, I do remember that he gave a penalty and then didn't give the penalty. And Michael Owen had so much abuse heading his way when he was stepping up for it. That's what I remember, and I thought to myself, is this what football's going to be like now? It's different when you watch it on TV, of course, but when you're actually there live and you hear a lot of people shouting towards a player, I'm thinking, is this what I've got to do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, if people were watching this on because I think it was live on ITV, but it was a bit live on BBC. So there's highlights on YouTube, full highlights, and also so the full game and highlights. But there's Barry Davis was doing the commentary. I don't know if you remember Barry Davis, terrific, up there with Motson. And he was a very genuine commentator. And when the penalty was given for Taylor's tackle, his commentary went something similar along the lines of, I think it was Owens in the box. Oh, great tackle by Taylor. No, the referee's given a penalty. Even the commentator of the TV was incredulous that it had been given, and it's one of the most memorable commentaries I do remember from TV back in those days. That even Barry Davis was beside himself that he couldn't believe the referee had given a penalty.
But yeah, no, like I said, it's my first ever game, and what a game to attend, and I'll never ever forget entering Fratton Park for the first time.
Yeah, so that team, Hislop, Primus, Passanen, Dazoo, Stefanovic, like I said, went off injured at half-time. Hughes, Harper, Smertin, It was always a favourite of mine, Smertin. I had a pound bet with my mate on every game that Smertin would score. I lost a lot of money. Kwasi, Taylor, Berkovic, and Yakubu. Right? So we brought in these sort of utility players like Berkovic, who were amazing players on the ball, and Redknapp liked those, didn't he? But if you look at the Liverpool team, it's actually really lacks a lot of quality. You've got Kirkland in goal, he wasn't that great. You obviously got Finnan, Hencho, Hoopier, and Carragher. So massive, centre backs there, legendary centre backs for Liverpool, and Haman Gerrard in the middle, and obviously Heskey and Owen up front. But the players around them, like they had Letalak, Cheru, and Pongol, who I'm sure not even Liverpool fans remember, let alone us. So. Yeah, it's the spine of the team for Liverpool was terrific, but the rest of it was pretty poor.
And then fast forward a year or so later for Liverpool, of course, and they go and do that against AC Milan in the Champions League.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was all down to Gerrard, wasn't it? One man show for him. He went in that he went in that dressing room at half time, pulled his Superman suit out, and then went on and won the game for them, didn't he? So yeah, terrific. I mean, it was great watching those types of players at Fratton Park as well. We compare it to the last 10 or 12 years that we've watched an awful lot of no marks, haven't we, unfortunately, due to Pompey's languishing in the bottom divisions for various reasons. But hopefully now we can start to see some real quality. I mean, we saw some quality the last sort of 18 months maybe, but back in those days it was quality every week. So what else stands out for that sort of time? Because it was the start of Pompey's Premiership journey as well. So have you got some other memories from those years? Because how often did you manage to get to go then after that game?
So I actually started having a season ticket from the 04 to 05 season. So that's the second season we were in the Premier League. So the first season, of course, when we beat Aston Villa on the opening day of 2-1. That season I had
got
tickets.
sent off.
That's correct, yeah. And didn't he score the penalty as well, though?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
He did, yeah.
But I also remember getting a couple of tickets here and there for that season. I believe that was the year that we also beat the team down the road.
Yeah.
1-0, thanks to Yakubu, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a few memories from, obviously, at that time. But yeah, when I first got a season ticket, I used to have the same ritual all the time, having to get there early, run up to go into the little club shop, which is at the back of, obviously, down by the little alleyway. That's where it was. And I just remember thinking every time I was going in there that I was going to be buying something new, even though my dad always told me no because of how expensive the tops were and stuff.
Yeah.
Back then, I also remember the season tickets being paper, so you'd have to go into the counter and get your season ticket, and it'll be taken off at the turnstile before you've been allowed in. But I also remember every week I'd have to get a program. At that age, I had to get a program with the teams that we were playing and everything, and I was just so fascinated by the level of football that I was watching, and I know there's been a trend going around lately of Barclaysman and everything like that. And obviously I've got fond memories of players just that fits that criteria, of players that never was like set in the world alight, but always was remembered for being pretty quality in the Premiership. But yeah, at that time, I just remember all the big teams coming down and they were absolutely blown away by our atmosphere and our togetherness as a club, because we were never the biggest club going into that league, and we've always admitted that. But we always gave a team a go because of obviously the passion and everything that we had, and we always gave a team a good go, and there was a lot of momentum going into it. And yeah, early days of watching Premier League, especially the Great Escape season, that was one that really, really stands out to me. And I still remember still being quite young and getting a bit emotional at the time, thinking, are we actually going to go down after just a couple of seasons of being in the top flight? But these sort of memories stand out to you. When I have conversations with people around my memories from Pompey, you got Pedro Mendes, that volley into the corner against City, Matty Taylor and Benjani away at Wigan, that sort of thing. These things stand out. Loire against Arsenal before getting injured from his somersault, that sort of thing. There's loads of things. There's loads of different things that I'm really, really pleased to say that I've had good memories of watching Pompey play. And back then, the pinnacle side of the atmosphere was there. I know it's coming back, and it definitely was there last season at times as well, which, when you're in that moment and you're watching the team slightly older, you can't help but think about flashbacks to when you started watching the club. But I've got really good memories of watching Pompey when I was younger, especially against the Scum. Which watching that 4-1, when we sent them down and seeing Harry Redknapp in the away dugout. I was a mascot as well, against Charlton when we won 4-2 or 4-1 at home.
Yeah, that's Perrin's first game, wasn't it? So
and Yakubu scored after about 2 minutes.
Yeah, so Motson, I had a friend who worked for various gaming companies, and he ended up working for EA Sports and being the director for FIFA. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. Died a few years ago, and that's why so that's the reason why Pompey were put into FIFA that season. The
with
team
the
came
flowers
from Canada and rendered it. And who did the flowers?
Who?
Me.
Did you?
Yeah.
See, look, you learn something new every day, don't you?
Yeah. So I went to. I had to get the train down, and I had to, for some reason the Fratton and Town stations were shut, so I had to get the train down from London to the Hard, and there's a flower shop just on down Marmion Road. So I was walking back up that way, and I went in there and I said. Actually, no, sorry, I lied. I ordered them from a shop in Marmion, so to walk from the Hard to Marmion, and I ordered red, white, and blue flowers. So they had to dye the flowers blue, so they could get red roses and white roses, but no blue roses. So she had to dye some roses blue. So I picked them up, and we took them to that game, and we were allowed to put them into the goal. And his name was read out as a memorial a couple of weeks after he died. But also, you'll notice that there's some oranges there as well from another friend of ours as well. And that's been in the game ever since because they rendered them. So I took loads of photographs and sent them to EA in Canada, and they rendered them. So
I did actually always wonder how they got there. Generally, see, that is such a small world situation to be in because I play it every year. You see,
no, that's their tribute to him. Basically, he'll be in the game forevermore, as long as they don't re-render Fratton Park. And I'm sure if they do, then they'll they have to now because it's completely different. But maybe we'll get them back across to re-render it. But yeah, no, that's my contribution to the world of gaming. So to go back to that game, he'd been working with Motson and various other commentators for doing commentary for games. So he knew Motson quite well, and Motson contacted him and said, "Can we have some Pompey fans to get interviewed for Match of the Day?" So me and 3 or 4 mates went to get interviewed as Vox Pops for Match of the Day before the game started, and we were briefly on Match of the Day that night as well, which is quite a thrill.
So that's the other thing, though, isn't it? Match of the Day and things when you're in the Premier League. That at that time as well when I was younger, because we're talking about 045. I was about 10 or 11, for example. So I was always fixated on wanting to see highlights, and even now, you've got a lot of fans that, if your team don't win, you don't want to watch any highlights of any teams in the evening. If you win, it's recorded or you're watching it live as soon as it comes on. It was no different for me when I was growing up watching Match of the Day. If we had been beaten at home or away and I was really, really disappointed with it or upset, I wouldn't watch Match of the Day that weekend. It's just the way it was. And I think that says a lot about football. Now, I think it says a lot about how it takes over, your life and your plans, etc. And I don't think much has changed, but it just shows you the intensity of what football can do.
Yeah, well, I forgot to mention his name. It's Simon Humber, because my other friend Reece will never forgive me if I don't. We're always thinking of you, Simon, and well done, my friend. I suppose the Premiership years obviously imploded massively after some fantastic times, and you mentioned in your answers about, we went to Wembley quite a few times and ended up unbelievably winning the FA Cup. So what were your memories of some of those Wembley trips?
The earlier ones, in terms of the year that we won, is obviously brilliant. And I mentioned earlier on about how sometimes Pompey had got me quite emotional and things beforehand, especially the Great Escape season. But the 08 year that we won the FA Cup, I just remember it so clearly that as soon as we had won it, and obviously Sweet Caroline and that was coming on, when everything had finished, all the partying was done, and everybody was leaving, going down the steps and things, I just burst into tears. I just literally burst into tears because I didn't know how to deal with it, even at that age where I was starting to get a bit older, understanding, the world around me and things, and starting to understand that, people's opinions on football is you know, a lot of people that don't watch football always turn around to you and say, obviously, football isn't life. You know, you don't have to look at it like that. But it was in that moment and the FA Cup final when we obviously beat Cardiff that actually made me realise this is why I love the sport. But yeah, like you say, the trips to Wembley, such as the semi-final against West Brom, I remember that as well with Carnu, and just thinking, wow, I'm going to be back here soon.
Yeah.
But obviously around Wembley, you had all the little, obviously shops and cafes and things like that. And obviously, again, because I hadn't have experienced Wembley myself before, it's just like when I went to my first ever game at Fratton against Liverpool. Like I explained, it was the unknown. I didn't know what to expect. I was nervous because at that age I wanted nothing but to win. And I just remember, you know, standing around with loads of Pompey fans in the streets, just having a drink, having a chat, realising that obviously a lot of fans have been there before to see Pompey, but nothing to the level of what we were in. You know, an FA Cup semi-final and then the final. You know, they've all had their own experience and things, and I suppose I just haven't had many people that's experienced the success that we've had before that time, of course. I've just not been lucky enough to have that conversation with older generations, for example. But I do remember very well that obviously the run to the FA Cup final wasn't easy. I remember watching on telly the Preston North End game that we had just won thanks to an own goal in the 95th minute or something, or it might have gone to extra time. I can't remember, one of the two. But yeah, really, really good memories of that FA Cup. Not so much the 2010 though, not because we lost to Chelsea, but because I'd broken my ankle the day before the game and I wasn't able to go to the final.
Oh no.
So yeah,
No.
that's what I mean.
But did you go and see the Spurs semi-final though?
I did, and
yeah. Well, that was the most important game. That was the most important game.
That's the thing, though. When you discuss about the FA Cups and you compare them, etc., and obviously a lot of people's going to talk about the defeat to Chelsea in the final, but to me, it felt so much better for some reason to beat Spurs in that semi-final than a little bit of when we actually won the FA Cup in '08, purely because of obviously what was riding on it, how it was David versus Goliath, Harry Redknapp in the away tunnel, and you see YouTube videos now, don't you, of all the atmosphere that day from the Pompey lot. It's just unbelievable. That day, before obviously it came to AC Milan, further down the line, that was one of the best atmospheres I've ever been in. And getting one over Harry Redknapp, because obviously they had all the players then, didn't they? You know, in terms of the talent. But to do it, but most importantly, to do it in the financial situation we was in and the position that we was in as a club meant so much more as well. And it comes back to me being emotionally attached to this club. And I think that was a true reflection that day of, you know, they did it for us, they did it for the fans, and it gave us something to be happy about in such a miserable time.
Yeah, it was a strange year, that 2010 year, because I was heavily involved in the supporters groups and the early days of the trust at that point. So outside of football, you were dealing with day to day grim news, you know, shocks about owners, non-owners, and all the rest of it, and it was just really depressing to see your club in that sort of state. But then obviously on the pitch, you know, we struggled badly in the league, and even without the points deduction, we would have gone down, I think. But then this FA Cup run came out of nowhere, and you know, it just, you know, suddenly we were playing Birmingham in the quarter final, and we quite easily beat them. And then you're back at Wembley again. You think, well, how did this happen? It's quite unbelievable. You forgot
the most
wasn't
important one, didn't you? Beating the Scum.
Well, of course, yeah, 4-2 away. Yeah, that was. Not
4-1.
Not quite. Well, 4-1. Yeah, not quite as much limbs as probably you're going to tell me later for one of your favourite matches. But yeah, it was a good time to be at St Mary's. But you've detailed in your email to me some other great memories and times. So take us through one of those. Obviously, another one involves a game at Southampton.
Yeah, so that's still to me. Is probably my favourite game that I've ever been to, and that is purely from my opinion and my experience. And that was when we were in the Championship and we were pretty much bottom and they were top in 2012. And obviously coming into the game, all Pompey fans weren't allowed to make their own way. We had to go in coaches all together, leaving Fratton. That in itself is, you know, you're asking for trouble, aren't you, really, in terms of from their end when we get there, because they're going to be standing outside all the pubs where the coach is going to drive past. We remember bricks being chucked at us constantly through the windows, and as soon as you get there, you're barricaded in to go straight into the away end.
Yep.
Because at this point, obviously, the build up to it was so big, because I remember playing Southampton at home, and it was Joel Ward that got the equaliser down the Fratton end.
That's right, header.
That's right, yeah. And I just thought to myself at the time, we'd done really well to get that point, because obviously, unfortunately, they were on fire that season, and they had players like Adam Lallana, Billy Sharp, all performing really, really well for them.
Yep.
And I just got into the ground thinking, just like every other Pompey fan, and they wouldn't, be ashamed to admit that we were expecting a big defeat that day. But as soon as it got to 2-1 in terms of to them, and you were waiting for the official outcome of if it's going to be a goal or not from the corner, because obviously it was Billy Sharp that tapped it in, and the discussions around, obviously, was it offside, was it onside? He was onside. And as soon as they went 2-1 up, all you hear, obviously, is the home. And I just remember all the whistles for about 10 minutes straight, waiting for the ref to blow,
Yeah.
And you just think to yourself, here we go, this is it, Derby Day defeat. And it's gone from probably my worst day supporting Pompey, being in that away end, to the best. And I was with my dad as well that day, and I just remember really, really well that, again, all you can hear is noise of boos into your ear, waiting for the referee to blow the whistle, and you're thinking to yourself, this is it. And then they do their usual songs and everything, and as soon as David Norris has hit that ball and it's gone into the net, I don't think I've ever seen so many seats, unfortunately, I have to say, of course, smashed, but people jumping up on them and people falling over. And I don't think, unless you've experienced a derby day, in terms of a proper English football derby day, that means a lot to both sets of fans. I don't think you can actually express how much football means to you. And personally, that's, again, just an opinion, because I've experienced it myself. I've been to probably 6 or 7 derby days now. That's the best one to me, because of the way that the season was going. We were bottom, they were top. And I just remember so well coming away just absolutely ecstatic that we had got the point.
Yeah.
And I will always remember that, because it's David Norris Day, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Abberton, the manager there. One of the few things he did well for us. I don't think he was obviously well backed by the club, because obviously we were being sucked dry from our owner. But yeah, it's. I was doing a bubble boycott. I was one of those people who didn't agree with the bubble, so I boycotted it that week. So I watched it on television, and my dodgy feed finished 5 minutes before the game. So I thought we lost 2-1. I didn't see it.
See, I didn't have a choice. My dad got the tickets and was like, "Yeah, we're going." I was like, "Okay," with my big hat on, because I didn't obviously mention to you earlier on, sorry, Scott, about it, was that when I was younger, I always had a hat like Westwood's.
Oh, right.
That I took to every game. I always took it to a game. I had a proper top hat on, and I had a tattoo of Pompey each side done every single game.
Awesome.
So that's what it was like, but I didn't do it for that game.
You had the much better experience than I did. I was sat in my flat in London thinking we'd lost 2-1. So, yeah. And obviously,
but if Norris hadn't
later,
have done that, you would have been in a better position than me.
Yeah, I could have gone straight down the pub. So, before we talk a little bit more about your current experiences, so obviously you're heavily involved with the 4-0 crew, and also with the Chichester Supporters Club on the committee. So, if you take us through another few of your favourite players that you remember from history, and then we'll talk about current history.
Yeah, so my favourite all-time Pompey player is Paddy Berger, purely because I remember when I started to watch Pompey, he was one of the first names I got on the back of my shirt. I think it's a reflection of that, like I said to you before, during the first season that we were in the Premier League, I didn't have a season ticket, and I always watched highlights, and back then they used to have a Pompey book that you used to be able to get on a monthly basis, a monthly one, like a little catalogue thing that reflects on the month, and you see all the scores and stuff like that. And I remember watching a couple of videos of Paddy Berger when he was at Liverpool, and then I saw that when he was at Pompey, comparing obviously the different ways in which he was playing, I just felt that he every time he played, he was just a joy to watch in midfield. And I
Yeah,
think even at the stage when we signed him, he done so much for us when he joined us, that because he was a bit of he's one of the players that some fans knew what to expect because of his time already in the Premier League. Because you've got the uncertainty of other players like what was his name, Begovic, not Berkovic or something.
Berkovic, yeah,
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 Smirtin, etc., that sort of thing. And I just remember Patrick Berger always performing for us, and away at Charlton I was at when he scored that worldie. But yeah, he was just an absolute joy to watch, and you just knew what you're going to get from him. Controlling midfield at times, and the slick passing, but he was never afraid to take on a man either in midfield, which was always rare at times, because you've got a lot of midfielders these days that just like to spring the balls left and right and find the gaps, etc. But yeah, I just absolutely loved watching Berger, and that's backed up with players such as, the obvious ones, Yakubu, Lualua,
yeah,
Todorov. I was really, really gutted when he had that really bad injury and he couldn't play that much in the Great Escape season.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a number of players. I won't mention Quasi because, again, even at that young age, I didn't actually like watching him. I'm not just saying it because of what happened when he transferred over to the other team. I just didn't really like watching him that much at the time. But yeah, there were some big players back then that we signed that were, just making their name into the English game that nobody had heard of. And that was what I felt like Dzeu, for example, Stevanovic, these players really put their name into folklore and Hall of Fame really for Pompey, for the way that they helped keep the club in the Premier League for years.
Yeah, well, they always conducted. So those types of players you mentioned, they were what I would call gentlemen. They were good, honest pros. They weren't people who were erratic in their performances. You knew you'd get a 7 or 8 at least out of them for every game.
And that's like people like Steve Stone, for example.
Oh
These
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of players, and a lovely, brilliant young Gary O'Neill and Matty Taylor as well.
yeah. Well,
For these sort of
they kept the
players,
team together. They kept the team together for at least 2 years, didn't they? They were the only
yeah.
two who were really pulling it out game after game.
But you're right, yeah. Early days of the Premier League, and then when you move over to the Great Escape season, you had players like that didn't really stay long, but made a massive, massive mark with the players like D'Alessandro, for example.
Oh yes, oh
That's
yes.
it though. That little bit of quality that actually, from a, let's just say, fairly negative season, it as a
Yeah,
whole, really gave the fans something to be happy about and admire. But yeah, you're right. These sort of players over the years of when I was growing up, and then when you get to the '08 season when I'm still fairly young, Diarra, these sort of players, Montari, Glenn Johnson. Sometimes you do have to pinch yourself in that situation, from when we started in the Premier League to just 4 or 5 seasons later to be getting these names: Sol Campbell, David James, Cranshaw, these sort of players. Lauren, not so much. Pamela,
no.
for example, that sort of
Well,
thing.
you're right to mention all those. There was I think for at least 2 or 3 England games, we had 5 of the starting 11
Is
to
David
start the
Nugent
starting for
included
England.
in that?
No, no Nugent. We had Crouch, Defoe, Campbell, um, goalkeeper David James, and Glenn Johnson.
Yeah.
They were the starting 11 for England at that point.
But this is it, yeah. Like you say, that season when we had all of them, that was nothing but obviously positivity, was it? Because we'd won the FA Cup. I've got fond memories of that particular season. But then obviously after that, and what had happened, and obviously what was revealed as to what we would call our downfall, of course. But
Yep.
yeah, going back to like Matty Taylor and things, the worldies that he scored against Everton, Sunderland away during the Great Escape season. These will always be remembered if he was there, because obviously these are the things that stand out to you, and these are the reasons why we love football. We like the unknown, we like the spectacular, and we like to be seeing players that really, really perform for the shirt that you can have good fond memories from.
Yeah, and let's hope we see a bit more of that this season. We haven't seen it much so far, have we?
No,
So you've part of the reason why I asked you is because you're involved in the Chichester Supporters Club, but also you're part of a media crew who I've enjoyed watching on YouTube. My son got me into you, so so all of a sudden he said, Daddy, we've got to watch this YouTube video 2.5 years ago," and I was like, "Oh, okay then." So we used to watch it every Sunday morning. Me and him sat down, and then he's we used to walk past Tom and yourselves, and I said to him, "Do you want to stop and see if we can talk to him?" He went, "Oh, can we?" I said, "Yeah, of course we can." And it's now part of our batch routine if we get there on time. So my son, as you know, is autistic. He has to get to his seat. So we have to have certain things that we do, from getting out of the car to getting to his seat, and then he's comfortable. And one of it is talking to you guys, and that's wonderful. And I hope Tom realizes that what he does for kids like Kai, because for them to have that little bit of interaction and also see themselves on screen for 10 or 15 or 20 seconds, it just absolutely makes their weekend. So how long have you known Tom and the others, and how did you get involved with what they do?
So I've known Tom now for, I would go on and say, probably about 10, 11 years. So when he was really young and he just started doing his channel, along with his dad and a few others, I popped onto the channel now and again, just like anybody else, just being interviewed quickly to see my score predictions, etc. And I remember at the time that I wanted to be involved a little bit more, but I think due to the fact that I went off to university and that into Luton, so I wasn't living down here, I didn't think it was the best time either.
Right.
And obviously he had just started off doing his YouTube, etc. So I didn't know what direction that was going to go down, because with Tom, he did really well, because there was, like I said, 4 or 5 of them involved in the channel to start with, and they did all the work and the editing, etc. and got it really off the ground from an early stage. And it wasn't until, I'd say, maybe 2 years ago now, probably, that when I had seen him again out Fratton End, out the back of Fratton End, just like you have, where you pass by, say hello, get on camera sometimes, it made me realise that actually I remember what I wanted before to get involved more with what he was doing. So I'll always be honest and say it was always me that initiated the conversation of getting involved. I'll always put my hands up to that. But because I'd went to university to do screen performance and communication techniques and had some work experience as well, it was right up my street. And obviously the passion that is for Pompey, I get to share it with a load of people every day if I was involved. And so I just dropped in a message and said, look, if you ever need me to come on or give you a hand with anything, do just let me know. And instead of Tom being, turning around saying, that's great, thank you very much, I'll bear that in mind, and never getting back to me, straight away he said, I remember you, Reece, obviously from years ago, and we always spoke and things, and be happy to have you on board. And it was literally as simple as that. And from the day after that he dropped me that message, I've done nothing but be involved as much as possible with it. And I do need to say, though, that because of a lot of people see Tom just through the camera and think that obviously he's all football mad and that's the only thing he'd probably be reaching out to his crew about, I do have to say about Tom, he's one of the nicest guys you will ever meet outside of football. He's always caring, he's always checking on you, making sure you're all right, dropping you a message, calling you at random times to see how your day's been. I have got nothing but the utmost respect and love for that boy, and that's why he's such a close friend of mine now. And I think that's why we get on so well, is because we understand each other, and we know it's not always going to be about, right, let's plan for the next game, what content are we going to do here. That is actually second to what we actually focus on, and that's each other and our personal lives. And I think that's why we work so well, because he has the same empathy for people as I do. So when we are at the Fratton End, anybody that wants to come on camera, anybody that's a bit shy and that, I'll always talk to and make sure that they're having a nice time, because, again, you've already alluded to it. People like to be on camera, have a look back at the next video, or get themselves started into that sort of thing, because Tom allows people to obviously express their own opinions through the camera. And when you go to Pompey, if you can start as early as possible at a young age to be expressing what you want to be expressing, then obviously it's only going to help the next generation of football fans to be obviously more kind to each other and understanding of, obviously, of the media itself. But yeah, I've been helping him, and I created the dance. Obviously, that was just random. That was just decided. That wasn't even pre-planned or anything, and it
Well,
stuck.
unfortunately, that's not going to come across on audio, is it? So people
No,
will have to check out the 4-0 You're
yeah,
Over It
and
channel
that's
to
what I
see
get
the
asked
dance.
to, and that's what I get asked to quite a lot. And I've been nothing but grateful for Tom for having me on board since I obviously got involved a couple of years ago now, and I get stopped at random places. I can be in Gunwharf shopping or something, and in the shop, someone will pat me on my shoulder and ask me to do the dance. And I
Brilliant.
live way away from Portsmouth as well. So when I go to my local Tesco's, I'm literally in my sliders and socks and things in my PJs, and there's somebody in there saying, "I recognise you," and I'm thinking, "Oh God, I only wanted to milk." Um, but no, I've got nothing but utmost respect for Tom, and obviously I get on really, really well with his dad and the rest of the crew because, again, Tom organises it all. He plans it out, and he puts a lot of hard work into it. You can tell
Yeah.
it's his channel, and I always say to him that, "Oh yes, you've done really well with the video and all that," but because of the kind of bloke that Tom is, he always reflects and it says our channel, which is says it all about him.
Yeah. Well, that's
It
lovely to
really, really
hear.
does. I've got nothing but respect for him, and he's such a close friend of mine now, especially over the last couple of years. But yeah, that's how I got involved, and I'm really, really glad that we did get promoted, not just for the club, but for our channel as well, because Tom has now been able to reach out to more content creators in the club, around the league and that, and it's just made it more bearable travelling around to different grounds now after doing the last one for 7 odd years.
Well, I mean, he kind of inspired me to do this because my son wanted to do something, but he's not quite ready to do it yet. And I thought, well, to be honest, I discussed with a few of my friends. I said, let's just get together and have a chat and see how we get on with things. And then I thought about this separate strand about actually talking to people like yourself and various other people about, why they love Pompey, because it's always great to hear. People always want to express that love, don't they? And it's very nice to hear it from you as well. So just before we wrap up, because like I said, 45 minutes is usually all my listeners can take. So we'll we'll so you're obviously a doer. So because in your work you work with children, and obviously you're heavily involved in the media side with Tom and the others. But also you've got yourself involved with the Chichester Supporters Club, which,
Yeah.
as we discussed before we started recording, is sometimes a little bit of a thankless task. But how did you get involved with that as well?
Yeah, so I had popped down to a couple of the meetings over the last couple of years, just as a guest. Sorry, not as a guest. I'm not quite at that level yet, am I? Um, but no, just coming in to be a member of the supporters club, and it was always stationed at different venues as well. We never had something like fixated, for example. One minute
Yeah.
it might be at Chichester City Football Club, the next it will be at a pub just around the corner. And basically, I started getting involved in the committee itself when Andy, our chairman, he asked me if there's any way that I can start to help, because I visited at the Richmond, and I believe it was for the Joe Pigott meeting itself when he came down, and I believe we only had about 15 people come to see him and meet him, and
Yep.
it's a small pub as it is, but it felt really small in terms of obviously the numbers wise. And I remember sitting there with Adam Turner, because he was part of the committee beforehand and a good friend of mine that lives locally to me. And we went together and sat there and watched it. But then, yeah, as soon as it finished, Andy came up and said, "Look, I need some fresh ideas. I need some more bodies in. Let's get this supporters club back on track with obviously getting the members in and making it a real
Hmm.
success for players to come down to." That's starting with, different venues and all that. But basically, he just asked me to do all the social media side of things, making sure we can reach out to different members and make sure that everybody understands that, right, flyers, posters, time, dates, etc. Everything that needs to be plastered out there is out there, because at this moment in time, back then, there was only going to be, here and there WhatsApp messages to the people that was going on a regular basis. And yeah, I think since then, since after that meeting, we went to Chichester City Football Club. That was a real success in terms of numbers. So it was a good starting block. Um, and yeah, there's basically been since then at the rugby club, Chichester Rugby Club, where we've now got over 150 odd members signed up on a regular basis. And of course, as I mentioned, Tom's a very, very good friend of mine, and he was always going to, be a big name for fans to come down and just meet and greet, let alone him being
Yeah.
just the host. So it worked really, really well in terms of obviously us coming together, deciding that, let's get Tom involved. So it's been nothing but success since then, and we've not looked back in terms of obviously getting more members involved, making it a real success. And I think people such as obviously Johnny and Ashley that is attached to the football club itself, I think they're more pleased when we've got members like that turning up every month for a meeting. But I deal with everything in terms of posting out on social medias, interactions with the members if they've got any questions, etc. I've just absolutely loved it. And obviously I've got Tom to thank for that as well, because he brings in a lot of people with just his name. But it was, like I said, it wasn't struggling to the point where we were going to have to stop it, but there wasn't too much engagement at that time. And so there's a few of us committee now, and we're pretty good with communication, which is really, really key, especially with a supporters club, making sure we've got ideas moving forward and names to bring in when it isn't the representatives from the club each month. Absolutely love it. And it's another passion of mine, because it's all about Pompey, isn't it? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're doing a great job, mate. And personally, as a fairly new resident to Chichester myself, I've been here a year now, and I was going to join the club before I even knew you were involved, because I used to be good friends with Del Pulley, so I knew he used to be the main guy. So it's nice to bump into him when we had the your sign up a couple of months ago, and that was really, really busy, and clearly with the engagement you've now got, it's really, really growing. So well done on that, Reece. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. This has been your Pompey life. It's been great listening to your past and present experiences, and let's hope we can see Pompey turn the corner this season and start get a few wins very soon.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, giving me the platform to be able to express my memories from an early stage of supporting Pompey. And you're absolutely right. Let's hope for fortunes to change. And thanks, Scott.
All right, you're welcome, mate. Thank you very much for listening to this, my third My Pompey Life. This is Reece Hawkins' episode, and it was a delight to speak to him. We'll be back hopefully next week with the usual crew, the usual squad, hopefully discussing a Burnley win, but we'll see what happens with that. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and I do hope you listen again in the future. Take care. Bye-bye.